Ruchim Aboim B'Shem Irgen Shir Torah Moses Boston. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's shir. I'd like to give a yeshakach to the sponsors of tonight's shir, Hershey Oberlander, Le'ilu Nishmas, Aisha, Malka, Basar, Bavrom, Anshla, Kohen, Aleh Sholem, and a yeshakach to the Lowenger family, sponsoring Le'ilu Nishmas, Aisha, Mindel, Basar, Bosh, Aleh Sholem, and Le'ilu Nishmas, Rabbi Yosef Eisen, Ben Peretz, Olav Sholem. Tonight's shir is also learned Le'ilu Nishmas, Aisha Chaya, Fega, Rivka, Master Buda Arya Leib, Sholem, the wife of Reb Chaim Gross, who was one of the board members of Irgen Shir Torah and was Mechazek Irgen Shir Torah throughout the years. The yahrzeit is today, Chaf of to Nishmos Tzur B'Tzur HaChaim. As you've no doubt heard, the Irgen Shir Torah's annual dinner is coming up in just a couple of weeks, August 18th. It's the perfect opportunity to show Yakaras HaTov to Irgen Shir Torah and the Rabbanim, Magidei Shir, whose shiurim we've enjoyed. We put an ad in the journal in their honor. Call Irgen Shir Torah at 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com for this great opportunity. Tonight we have the cover to have with us once again Rabbi Yosef Eisen, ShlitaRav of Kollel Bnei Torah, to speak on new Kashrus findings. It's my cover to call on Rabbi Eisen for tonight's drasha.
Boisai, good evening. It's a very big schus to be able to be a chelik of this incredible moisid of Irgen Shir Torah that's Marbitz Torah la'alofim, la'alfei alofim. The truth is that I really should not be here this evening. I should be in Yeshiva Tar V'das, where they're having a haskara, a 20th, marking the 20th yahrzeit of Moira V'Rabbi Rav Pam Zechat Tzadik Levracha. And I realized this about a week ago, and when Rabbi Lazar Kedarkai B'Kodesh, who is the consummate responsible individual who calls and reminds, I said, "Oi, Rabbi Lazar," I said, I didn't even realize, obviously, this was not in his gala to the rabbim until about a week and a half ago, when the yeshiva started to be mefarsim this evening, that they're dedicating to Rav Pam's yahrzeit, even though the yahrzeit is on Erev Shabbos, Kodesh, but just the way that the summer falls out, that this was the appropriate night. So he said to me, he said, Versteht, he said, you'll dedicate, you'll speak about the Rosh Hashiva for a moment, and it'll be Lil Nishmasim, and he then proceeded to tell me how incredibly involved he was, Mitchila, with such divrei idud v'chizik to him personally when they were launching the concept of Irgen Shir Torah. Rabbi Lazar told me he met with Rav Pam personally at his home, and Rav Pam literally went through all the different parts of the plan and the speakers that would be speaking, and he told me he gave him such a tremendous chizik and encouragement and divrei bracha that he said he left his house so committed and just so tremendously uplifted by the words of chizik that Rav Pam offered him. And he said that he attributes much of his passion, which he puts so much of that into the Irgen Shir Torah, to Rav Pam's warm words of personal encouragement. And the emes is that tonight's topic has very much to do with one of the many outstanding midas of the Rosh Hashiva of Rav Pam, and that is the antidote to our maladies of the Moisa Mashiach. What I'm referring to specifically is Rav Pam was a person that never did things in B'derech Bahala. He never did things, he was never a niva lahashiv. He always used to speak about doing things contemplatively and doing things methodically and doing things in a way where you put thought into what you're doing. And it's not just done quickly and just instinctively. And really, if we have to speak about a number of topics that we're going to address tonight, and it's not a matter of the Chas v'Chalila saying something in any way negative about a Tzibra Kodesh of any sort, but it's just rather speaking about what the nature of people have turned into over the past many years, Baruch Hashem, since things are so available to us. And the reality is people want everything instantly. They want, just like there's instant messaging, you don't have patience when you send an email if it takes more than most probably 2 seconds for it to say sent. You're already wandering, like looking at the computer, like what's taking so long? It's at least 1 to 2 seconds. And why doesn't the sent button appear? People want instant results with everything. People want just to know that you have instant access, everything to be done quickly. And that is the recipe for things which are done, things which are done in a very topical and a superficial way. And let me cite, I don't like to speak generalities because that serves absolutely no tachlis. So I'm going to be very specific in what I want to address tonight and be able just to be ma'orer certain things which are biyadenu to take charge of. If anybody has recently been upstate, there is a tremendous phenomenon. You speak about new things. The newest things, as it used to be, there was something called the concession. That if you had a little bit of a bigger colony, had a concession, sometimes the concession was a little bit bigger, and it was housed in a little type of a ramshackle outside the colony. Today, you walk into some of the supermarkets, wow, for 10 weeks, this must be a very hefty investment because the supermarkets crop up fast and quickly. And Baruch Hashem, it's a good siman that a lot of Yidden, the mountains are packed with people. Let me boy, whatever I'm going to say that applies to the mountains certainly applies to our local community supermarkets as well. But the chiddush is, if you have to say what's new is these super, kishmoi kenhu, they're supermarkets. They're super because they include so many different parts. They include, in every single supermarket, there's a meat department and a bakery department and a fish and a sushi department and a vegetable department and just any single thing that you need, there's a department there, there's a vendor, there's a separate person selling it there. And, just by the mere tremendous expanse in every single supermarket. So what happens is that when you need to service people quickly and that the lines have to move and people have to have that they just go and they see and they take and they fill the carton and then it gets scanned and you get charged. So many things are done super quickly. Let me give you several examples of what I'm talking about. You have many times the area of the fish area. One of the biggest industries that have literally burst through the seams is the sushi departments. I personally, never developed a taste for sushi, but I'm the miyuta. Sushi is extremely, as a matter of fact, it's the amod dabar. If you're serving something at a parlor meeting and you have a choice what to serve, the choice will be sushi. You're going to serve sushi. And the truth is that if sushi is potentially something which could be laden with Kashrus problems. And let me explain to you what the problems are. Many times the sushi departments, I don't think have you ever seen somebody without, a different religion coming from a different part of the world, man a sushi. I don't think I've ever seen anybody but, people that are really Chinese or Korean man sushi. That's a mitzvah. They know sushi and they are in charge of the sushi departments. And I've never seen, unless you could tell me you've seen, what I don't think you could say that. So what that means is that it takes about 2 seconds to push down the button that cooks the sushi. There's 2 types of machinery that is crucial to cooking and preparation of sushi. There's the rice cooker, and there's a rice warmer. They look very similar. Very, very likely that you would not even be able to tell them apart, other than a button. And sometimes even the button is a little tricky. This is the type of a thing where people there's a big demand. And there's a big demand that people want things quick and people want things instantly. So therefore they're under pressure to produce them. And many times the rice and the sushi cannot be made as quick as the orders come in and as quick as people want and grab them up, especially when you're talking about on a Wednesday, Thursday, when people buy this in very large quantity. So right then and there, if you have a system that's not ironclad, it takes literally, you're talking about 1 or 2 seconds, it takes 2 seconds for the guy just to push down that button of the rice cooker and cook the rice, literally. Without safeguards that it just doesn't, it's just not able to be monitored if you don't have a good hashgacha. That's just one example of how literally in an instant there's bishul akum on the rice itself. Anything that's made together with the rice becomes aser, because certainly it's a chelik of you don't take the sushi roll apart. The keli that you cooked in, even if you did it once, with the machlokes rishonim, the Rosh and the Rashba, and l'chatchila we're machmer, and we hold that a keli that a guy cooked in requires hechsher, and you really can't kasher a sushi cooker. You just can't. Just technically, al tzilchus hechsher kelim. So one time, literally less than 2 seconds, if there's not a system in place, if there's nobody that is in charge to be mefakeach, so then if there's a good hashgacha, memela, that's olive based to a good hashgacha, to know that the sushi department requires oversight. But if there isn't a ironclad hashgacha on every single department, then that's not the case. So this is, again, not only to up in the mountains where there's a ton of these, places that sell sushi, but also in the city during the year round. To know that sushi requires a very good hashgacha. Now, the topic of tonight's shir, which was a new development in Kashrus, let me share with you, Taka, a very new development. Part of the sushi tsura, and it's almost not even called sushi without this, is the seaweed, is what they call nori. These nori sheets are produced in China and Korea, two of the most honest places on earth. When you shake somebody's hand, you got to see if you got all 5 left. Ad kedei kach. And they're infamous. They're infamous for doing things that are not totally above board. And the way that sushi is produced, they take it literally seaweed from the bottom of the sea, and they take it clods of seaweed, and they flatten it out, and they go through a cleansing process, and they make it into sheets. V'nishdvi, over the years, there was always concerns for several types of distinct insects on the seaweed surface. Something called seahorses, shrimp, and it looks like mini shrimp. And the third thing is copepods that you find in water also. And these have become literally over the last year a very big issue where the hashgachas are very mechulik in the use of this sushi, in this nori. The Nekudas HaMachloikis is based on a din in Siman Pei Daled, in which the Mechaber talks about something which is darkai l'hatliya. If you have fruits and other things, which the derech is that they do produce insects, but they're nisyavesh. You're talking about something which was Yud Beis Chodesh. And being that it's Yud Beis Chodesh, it becomes so dried that it has no taste anymore. And such, the Shulchan Aruch says that such an item, which is Nishabis, Yud Beis Chodesh, is not awesome. The question over here is that does these seahorses and copepods and shrimp on the surface, when they get baked, even though it could be that they took them out of the bottom of the ocean 24 to 48 hours prior, and it's certainly not Yud Beis Chodesh, but the baking system, the roasting and the toasting, makes it nisyavish. But nevertheless, even though it's nisyavish, there is an element that is brought down to Shulchan Aruch that says that you need, if you see it on the surface, you need to remove it. You need to remove that item which you see, the toilas that has been nisyavish, you should remove it. So what has happened now is that there has been a big tumult among the many big hashgachas if you are required to check for these seahorses and shrimp, being that they're baked and they turn into something which is tantamount to Yud Beis Chodesh. So are you mechuyev to take them off? Is it nisyavish legamri that lechatchila you should take it off, or if it's something that it really is rooted in how to learn and understand the words of the Shulchan Aruch and the words of the Shach. Now, there are certain hashgachas that are on these nori sheets that actually check them prior to allowing them to be packaged with the hashgacha on the package. The Star K happens to be leading this campaign, and they have 3 brands which are important for you to know, people that do buy sushi. And this is a very practical yediyah in your hands, that the 3 brands that they certify that actually are checked prior to packaging, one is called Sweet City, and the Sushi Mitsuyan, and Sushi Maven. Those are 3 Hamisha brands, and those Hamisha brands go through a process of checking for these seaweed nori insects. But there are many other on the market that besides these brands. The problem is also what really made this come to the surface is something very interesting. Because of the dishonest factor of the factories, what happens is that the way the factories also don't want this stuff on the visible. Some of these nori sheets, if they're produced, they're so filled with these insects, they're mamish, you can see them. They're not marketable. So what they do is that they develop in these places an electric eye. In China and in Korea, they have electric eyes, and these electric eyes, as they go on the line after they're flattened into the sheets of nori, it goes through a processing line, and this electric eye spots an insect, and it shoves it off the line. The only problem is that a lot of the product that has been shoved off the line accumulates and amasses to large quantities. They don't want to throw even away like pruta, v'loy chatzi pruta. So what they discovered is that, I don't know how they discovered it, maybe Mashgiach went down to China and realized what they were doing. They took all the rejected product, the rejected nori sheets. That means even according to their standards, they were filled with insects, and they chopped them up and made sushi salad with them, with hashgacha. They made sure to put a fleshig designation because they had shrimp in it, it's fleshig. But lamaisa, because of this discovery, they realized what type of extent of the problem was, and that led one thing to the other, and that led to the most recent tumult that is existing in between the hashgachas. So somebody is a sushi fan, and they like sushi. So you should go through the due diligence of making sure what nori sheets we use for this. There are, as I said, there are several brands which isn't the roiv of the market, but it does have a big market share. Among these 3 brands, and you should look at it. There's also the hashgacha from Rabbi Weissmandel doesn't use, because of this recent tumult, doesn't allow in any of his places to sell any. I'll take a question in a second. Any nori, and they use, instead of nori sheets, they use something called soy sheets. Soy sheets are a little bit different. They're more expensive, and therefore it's not such a motivation to buy them, because they can't charge as much as they would want to charge, and also they look a little different, they taste a little different. So memela, so even though some places use these soy sheets, but not all of them do. Yes?
I bought some kind of orange, yellowish orange. Is that the soy?
I'm not sure.
It's like a yellowish orange.
It's a different color. It's not green. It's not the regular soy. It's not the regular typical nori sheet. But it should say it on it clearly that it's made of soy. So if you talk about again the supermarket, and this is just again because of the tremendous bahal in selling, they have to sell and they have to produce, they have to cook. And in talking about this also really leads us to another nakuda of what's new out there. What's new out there is also the tremendous drive. It used to be that there were 2 or 3 companies that made pre-washed vegetables. 2 or 3 companies that they were well-known companies that were in business for decades, or at least 10, 12 years. And those were the brands that people were soymach on. They had multiple ashkachas, and the mile of multiple ashkachas of when they're really quality ashkachas is that they don't necessarily rely on one another. They work together. And what happens is when you have a combination of 2 or 3 ashkachas that work independently, but they work in tandem with one another, that means that there's a understanding that whoever has the highest common denominator in standards becomes the operating standard. So memela, it's very good for the consumer when there are multiple legitimate ashkachas, because they're all working together, and ultimately the level of standard will be a higher level because they all, agree upon the highest common denominator. Now, having said that, that was till a few years ago. Then what happened over the last few years, this market became very profitable. Have you looked recently what the price for a pre-washed bag of salad is? $6.99, $7.99, and it doesn't mean that it had the old amount of ounces that it used to have. The ounces became less, the prices became more, because that's the market. That's no different. Are you aware that sugar is no longer 5 pounds? It's 4 pounds. Did the price change? Yeah, it got more expensive and it got less pounds. But that's, I'm just trying to give you over an understanding into the yoker. Now, what has happened with the vegetables? I want to tell you Ma'aseh Shaya. Of somebody that shared something with me. Somebody went into a supermarket and they went to buy one of the pre-washed, and it happens that they ran out. And what was on the shelf was items that were pre-washed and not certified. And they were all lined up, not far from one another, in close proximity. And the woman picks it up and she looks for the hashgacha, and she says, there's no hashgacha on it. She goes over to the manager, and he says, no, he says, there has to be hashgacha on it. She says, look. He looks backwards, forwards, there's no hashgacha. He says, you're right. She says, what are you going to do about it? He said, nothing. She said, what do you mean nothing? He says, people are going to buy it thinking that it's certified, because it's with where all the other certified stuff usually is. People are not going to know this. Why? How could you do that? How could you sell that? He said, lady, it's achrayus. He says, if somebody wants something with hashgacha, they'll look. And if they don't look, let them buy what they want to buy. That's be'erich. In other words, that it has become such a issue of wanting to get something out on the market that people just lose sight. Obviously, the postscript of the story is that when he saw her again, he apologized to her and he said, I didn't mean to say that. So, people don't purposely want to be machshel people, certainly not. But the point is that the whole industry of bedikas yerakis, and this is what I started off with Rav Pam, needs messinas. You need to go through a system methodically. And it's as boring as boring could be. It almost is, it's extremely boring. And you need a lot of patience and a lot of Yerushalayim. And what happens is that when people are skeptical and they'll say, let's get anything, that many times is the attitude of people. What are you making such a tumult? It can't be that it's all usher. Now, I want to read to you. I'm sorry for taking out my phone to read it, but I could not print it. I want to read to you from a sefer called Hein Oisher. That's a sefer that was written about 175 years ago. And this, what he writes, is literally unbelievable. It was Kedai just to come here, just to hear what this sefer Hein Oisher, it's available. You could go online and you could find it. He's a pirish on Mishnayos. A pirish on Mishnayos. He's mefarish Mishnayos. Now, this shtickle comes from the last Mishnah, Masechta Sotah, that talks about the simonim of Mashiach, of what's going to happen before Mashiach comes. Nu Rabbi say our Tekufa. So he teaches like this. One of the simonim is Yirei Chet Yimasu. Yirei Chet Yimasu. People that are Yirei Chet will be despised. That's the Taich Yimasu. And listen to the example that he gives. I'm reading it straight out from a sefer. Zok the Hainoisher. Mitoich is haram harbi b'macholim, because there are people that are oimid al mishmer, that want to be very careful with machole asuris. V'hoifchin oisai liroi shloya boiteloyim. Listen to the example he gives you. And he says there are people that go out of their way, they make sure that there's no teloyim in a particular food item or in produce. Oidover acher shel iser ki yireim lachtoi afilu b'shoigeg, because these yirei chet are afraid to be choite even b'shoigeg. Nim osim be'enei abrius. Frumax. They're only looking to make our lives miserable. Always chumras. That's how he teaches this. One of the simoni Mashiach that the Heilige Mishnah says is Yirei Chet Yimasu. And he says the Yimasu goes on people that are very careful in inyonim of Toiloyim, that they're afraid that they even to be choyte b'shoigeg, nim osim be'enei abrius hapechusais, the people that are just stam people, and therefore what happens is that they have disdain. Anina adash she'enim yoidim b'tiv kedoshim. They do not appreciate people that are trying to save them from Yisurim. So those people, instead of getting Yashikoyrach, they get a Mishaberach. Sufficient to Eigen. Now, he goes ahead and he continues the next pirish. V'ha'emes tiyeh nederes. The emes in the Yemois HaMashiach, right before Mashiach comes, is going to be nederes. It's going to be missing. It's going to be absent. So Zok the Hainoisher, what does that mean? Mipnei shemachmas shemoyasim hayirei chet. In other words, what he's doing over here is he's learning he's actually learning the hemshech of the Mishnah. And the hemshech of the Mishnah begins by saying Yirei Chet Yimasu, and then comes Va'emes Nederes. Va'emes Nederes, you know why Emes Nederes? Because Yirei Chet Yimasu. So the people that are the Yirei Chet, Shemach Meshamayasam HaYirei Chet, Shemefash V'Shem B'Macholim, HaYirei Chet Nimnim Lases Kain, they're afraid of getting criticized. They're afraid of getting just completely, just wiped away with the criticism and the sarcasm of people. And memelav al yideze einam yichol laharis lahem masha. Don't show it to me. I can't see it. It's not there. If these insects I can't see, they're not there. And they begin showing disdain. and they begin sharply criticizing. So therefore, Zok Mishnah, because of Yirei Chet, Yamasu, the result of that directly is a emes nederes. And therefore he concludes and says, Shu emes sheyesh bo'isei min machol dover iser, v'zeh goyrim shemes nederes t'loi salka daitayu. Shehi emes. Because they don't believe that it's emes. It's not true. Honestly, it's not a problem. So Memela, that's the difference. So what am I getting to? There are many different new brands of pre-washed salads out there. Many different brands. So how does a consumer, how does a person that's a Yorei Elikim, that's interested, obviously he came tonight, you wanted to hear something, how do you careful? You have to do research to find out which Rabbanim Machshirim. It's a specialty. You don't go, if a person Loyalenu has an issue with their back, you don't go to a general doctor. You have a problem with the shoulder, you don't visit your general doctor. You visit a specialist. No one has ever heard going to a general doctor when you have a particular issue in part of your body that have specialists dealing with that part of the body. You go to a specialist. In any field, there's a specialist. There's a specialist. There's a specialist also in Inyanim Kashrus. And the person that's very good for general yediyas and general being oimed al mishmer doesn't mean that he's an expert in inyanim that we just read about, inyane toiloyim, which is become a very big issue because it's such a popular item. So with the new brands coming out, many new brands, and not only new brands, these new brands in many supermarkets stay side by side with something which they write triple washed, went to Niagara Falls, all sorts of incredible washing systems. And it's not necessarily a focused system to wash. So Memela, people are interested, just they see a new thing, they can't get it, it says triple washed and they find. But that's not the case. Just like you wouldn't trust anybody but a specialist when you'd go for a medical examination, consultation, you need to know and identify who are these specialists. You be chayker v'dayrish. You ask people, you ask Rabbanim, you ask people that are in the field. Who are the experts in this field? Who are the people that are responsible? Who are the people that could stand up against the pressure of a balabas threatening them and say, I'll close you down on the spot if you don't comply? How many people have that backbone to say that and walk away from a certification fee? How many people? There are people like that in the industry. There are people of impeccable integrity. You just have to know who they are. There are people that are involved in these type of productions that are not that meticulous and don't have such comprehensive systems. Who are they? You got to be chayker v'dayrish. You don't necessarily have to be chayker v'dayrish who's not the good ones. Be chayker v'dayrish who the bad ones. You have to be chayker v'dayrish who are the good ones. And so these are things which are very common. One of the popular things over here, what I just read from the Haim Oisher, that before Yemais Mashiach, there's going to be a proliferation, and also the Storms speak about it, that the Oretz will be niskalkel. Because of the Riboy Achet, people will say, the Rebbeinu Shalom created these things, could he create it with problems, with Teiloim? If the Rebbeinu Shalom didn't want to have it, or you to have it, why did he create it? Why did he create all that bounty? It's a good kasha, but it's not a good kasha. You know why? He created all that bounty. Alikim asa esa adam yashavim bikshu cheshbonis rabim, and we made it kalia. So that's takili before you Yemais Mashiach. Many things will become kalia, and we see it in front of our eyes. Who would ever have thought the most basic supplement of life is challenged with teiloyim? No water. What could be more basic than water? What could be more basic than a piece of fish? No Shlita, nothing. A person wants to be macher, esnish kan fish, esnish kan fleish, esnish kan chicken. He eats nothing but fish. Eat fish, you could be even more isurim than you are if you eat even a piece of meat that wasn't menukah properly. Make a cheshbon. if you take a piece of fish and there's anisakis, and you hold that anisakis is a problem, or other tilaim are a problem, for one, it depends what type of an insect it is. Loikech, arba, chomesh, v'sheish. No, many more lavim than just something which was not menukah properly or geshachtin even properly. So, who ever heard of such a thing that there should be? But elamai, before you Moshe Mashiach, because of the ribui achet, the macholim that the Rebbeinu Shalom blessed the world with will become the skalkel. You know, it used to be that people enjoyed a certain type of a produce item, which I certainly could tell you personally, I enjoyed it very much, and that are berries. And there are basically 4 types of berries that are filled, the market is filled with. Raspberries and blackberries, strawberries and blueberries. Okay, so all the years, as the years marched on, years ago there was a discovery that raspberries and blackberries are a problem. So Bikushi with a milchama, if anybody finds at any catering event a blackberry or a raspberry, you know that hashkach is not worth the paper that they're signed on. It's upgrade already. It's already the Amad Debar. It's Niskabel. And then came Chilukei Deis and strawberries. Okay, the people that use strawberries, the people that don't use strawberries. Okay. What was that? So that there are ways of doing that, but that's not your common. The common strawberry is not done like that. I've never heard about that. They do that. I've never heard something like that should be okay. Maybe it is. I don't know, but not that something has come to the market over the last dozen years. But one thing, people were happy with. People were happy with. There was one last standing berry. There were 3 down, even though 3 strikes and you're out. But there was one last standing berry that was left unchallenged, and that was the blueberry. Oh, clutch blueberries. A couple of years ago, there was a tumult on blueberries. That blueberries have an issue, and potentially they do. You know, even though it's very easy to wash a blueberry, it's very easy to find the potential problem in a blueberry. But the point that I'm making is that emphasizing again what the Mishnah says, but you just have to take a little more time. Tonight's share wasn't to focus on details, but there are ways to deal and check blueberries in a very easy way, and it doesn't take much time. But the point is you have to spend some time. But people say, you knocked out raspberries, you knocked out blackberries, you knocked out strawberries, and now also blueberry. It's crazy. It's a chumrah. But this is exactly what the Mishnah says. Hayir echet yimasu, haymes nederis. This is exactly mamish. It's kemat like divrei nevuah that this Hoin Oisher says pshat. But you even see it recently. The most basic flour was always, you open up any Shulchan Aruch, you see they had milburn. Milburn is something which is the beetle, which is a flour beetle, which you could find flour. Baruch Hashem, we achshadayre. And the Hamish brands, certainly the regular brands of flour don't have these problems generally because they mill very quickly, because there are 2 places that all these dry grains could become infested. They either become infested by the storing or by the place that they're held as they're sold in the market. So the warehousing is one major place. The national companies mill so quickly and they turn over so quickly, there's no chance that there is insect in the warehousing phase of it. So that means Pillsbury and Gold Medal and Heckers, these national brand of flours, which for us don't produce the same type of challah that our Hamisha, type of flour do for some reason. But Lamaisa, they're less of an issue. But there are certain brands of flour that they have them vacuum packed, and Memela, they're safe, they cost more money. That's also not a problem. The problem is sometimes on the Hamish brand that it says that they're recommending to sift. During these months, from May till October, it's very recommended to sift flour, because especially over the summer in the city where Think of it yourself. Supermarkets store a lot of stuff over. They buy things in May and June. If they don't sell it, people leave to the mountains. A good percentage of community leaves to the mountains, and this stuff stays in their warehouse, in the supermarket warehouse, for a month to two. That's a perfect climate to get infested. So therefore, there is a very easy antidote to that. The very easy antidote is just buy, even if you don't want to manually sift, buy an electronic sifter. They have something called the Pelamatic, which is a 70 mesh sifter, which is what they call the Bnei Brak sifter, and sift. So it's a very simple eitzah. You know, even grains that were so safe in the past, like quinoa, over the last 2 years, where quinoa is produced in Bulgaria, the whole warehouse in Bulgaria was filled with thousands upon thousands of insects. But it's very easy to check quinoa. You take a strainer that has small enough holes to hold back the quinoa. You put the quinoa in a strainer. You just shake it over a white paper plate, and you see if there's nothing there, it's clean. And if it's crawling, it's in front of you, it's crawling. It's a very simple check. It was a very badly infested a year and a half ago. Then it was quiet, and for some reason over the last month or two, we've heard this again. But this is the point, that it's a very easy antidote. You just have to be willing to say, okay, I have to invest a little more time. And be a little bit more diligent and careful. Now, going back to the whole, I want to share with you two more points before we finish the share. In terms of, you say, new Kashrus development, it's not really new, but it's new in the sense that it's much more apparent. It's much more visibly seen. And that is, who really is in charge? You have a supermarket that has a lot of action. There's baking. You know, talk about baking. I mean, one of the two primary issues in baking is if they're making milchik and parva, the separation, but also then there is the major issue of hafrashas challah. I can tell you, hafrashas challah is a major task to be on top of. Now, some hashgachas do something which they do in the national hashgachas, and they do you could look it up online, that is a Einam min Amuk of hafrasha, which is complicated, and we're not going to even attempt to explain that now. But l'chatchila, certainly in a bakery, like in our type of bakeries, there should be somebody internally that's mafresh challah. And I'm not going to talk about chilukim between a blila ava, a blila raka, when to be mafresh from a blila raka, pourable bladder. That's a shir b'fnei atzmai. But we're talking about minastam, separating challah from what's very clearly required, and that is a blila ava. Whether it's cookies, whether it's a rugelach, whether it's bread items, that's klar. How do you keep a cheshbon on all those, a bakery that's busy, busy, making one after the other, busy. How do you hold cheshbon? It's only totally in the vigilance and in the tremendous focus of the Rav HaMachshir. So what that means is that people walk in and they buy product. How many people ask, who is the Rav HaMachshir that gives hashgacha on the fresh baked goods? Remember, everybody wants, you walk into a supermarket, if you don't have an oven that smells like it's freshly baked, you're not attractive. It's not, you want the aroma to, like, say that even if you're thinking of only buying one challah, you're going to buy 3 challahs. You know, that's how it works. It looks very good. It looks very appealing. You don't want to be mitzamtzim. But whose hashgach is it? Remember, whose hashgach is it? He's really asking 2 questions. Is it really milchiks and parva? Is everything separate? And secondly, hafrashas challah. Rav Pam b'didi b'einai re'isi used to be oichel and he used to oichel mashayir. I think I would say came out, everything he ate. Any baked item, he was mashayir a little bit because he was choishish mitzad chumrah of challah. That was hanhaga, one of his many hanhagas of kedusha, which was so quietly and done and so not noticeable. Everything was so under the radar and no one noticed, but people that were close to him noticed he was misnaig b'inyonei mamish b'kedusha v'tara.
What do you do with that shit?
He wrapped it up and he put it away. He didn't need it. I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm good ashkacha, and my point much more is to say you should find out who's ashkacha, because ashkacha will be focused on this. There are many different ways that ashkachas handle this. They have logs, they have challah logs, and there are people that monitor the logs. In certain ashkachas, they've developed a very incredible system where they make the person being mafresh log. It takes about 15 seconds. It's an app on his phone, and every single time there's a person in charge, the multiple people that are in charge, they mark off and they log in that they were mafresh the challah. And what happens is it's so easy because it goes on, it gets put into it's on your phone, you log it in, it goes automatically into a spreadsheet, a Google Doc, that goes into the place, the office or somebody else's phone. And after a while, if you monitor it, you could see that, this store has a pattern. Sunday they do X amount of hafrashas. Wednesday, Thursday, it quadruples. If a person monitors it, you look at it, you say, 1 second, for the last 3 months, the hafrashas on Thursday has been right now. Why was there only one hafrash on Thursday? What happened? You learn the pattern. That they do that in my office. They learn the pattern, and then they wonder why is there a discrepancy. My point is that there are a good hashgacha will employ some type of a mechanism. Places are so busy. Don't you often wonder, how in the world do they keep up to the? Just go to one place that's super busy. A place like, let's say, like Sesame on Coney and L. The place, Kanainar, is super busy. Or you go to another place, another bakery, that's super busy. So this is a type of a thing that you just want to know, who's the Rav HaMachshir? What are you buying? Who is in charge? And that really is a question that people should notice, that when you have a place that has multiple vendors, they have a bakery and a sushi department and the meat department and a fish department and and takeout. Who's minding the store? Who's in charge? They have a yingle in charge, or they have a real person in charge. You know what amount of work goes into any typical supermarket? The amount of stuff that they produce that needs pikuach. So if the answer is okay, it's this Rav HaMachshir, so this Rav HaMachshir has a good reputation. He has his hands busy when he gives hashgacha in a supermarket. And he'll tell you, I have somebody going in there every day, every other day. He's on top of things. Isaiah get the younger man. And you know what? There are a lot of Achshir Doire. There's a lot of very talented younger light that really do their job very conscientiously. And it's very encouraging to see that there is a proliferation of very quality people doing this. But my point is that with the advent of new supermarkets, there are new kashrus issues. The new kashrus issues means they're not so new. They're old new, but it becomes, once you go into an environment that everything happens quickly, super quickly and accessible, and everything is working quickly, and there are lines, and people want to know, when are the next special chals coming, when the next rugal coming out, when is the next sushi? Everybody is, vayitzaku, everybody's screaming, tein lanu, tein lanu, tein lanu. And they got to produce. Supermarkets, are, Rabbi say, let's face it, if they wouldn't be very profitable, they wouldn't be opening and investing tens of thousands of dollars on flooring and lighting. Obviously, if they're spending that type of money, they are making wise investments. And the wise investments are they want to make the consumer happy. They want to motivate the consumer to buy. That means that they have to produce a lot. That means they have to produce quickly. And Memela, that's where the balance and the struggle comes in of quality people. But how does that relate to you? That's the question of the night. How does that relate to you and your family? It relates to you and your families that just like you would not, if your son is taking out the first time a car lease, you're just letting him choose any agent randomly to sell him insurance. You're letting him go to any leasing agency and lease the car. I think that would be the height of being a delinquent parent. You let your son just take an agent, and let alone if he hurts his hand, chas v'chalila, you're just going to say, just go to any doctor. You go to an orthopedist that has references that no. The same thing is this how it relates to you. It relates to you at least. Be aware. Kanai Nahara now, there are a bunch of Merachem on us, and he should keep us safe. There's a bahala of people are shopping, people are buying, people are making keddushim. There's a tremendous amount. The caterers today, the food producers today, have told me they can't keep up with the demand. I understood this would happen. That as soon as people were squelched, and quarantined in their homes for months, it was like, I could analyze it psychologically, but I'm not going to do that because I'm not a psychologist. But I understood that the tendency of people is that they build in certain tendencies that they always had. Now they got to squelch them. And then as soon as there's an opportunity to stretch, you stretch. And the caterers say they've never been this busy in years. Smaller parties, but they're busy. They're busy. So busy means that there's a lot more going on, a lot more food production. And how that lends itself to the issues I explained to you. But the bottom line is that don't go in blindly in things that you purchase for your family and your wife and your family. Purchase midday Shabbos v'Shabbat, midday Yom b'Yom. Become an educated consumer. Become aware of which pre-washed products are good and which ones might be questionable. Become aware of sushi. Who's in charge of the sushi department? It's lav dafka that one supermarket has one hashgacha. They could have one hashgacha on the meats and a different hashgacha on the takeout. Try it. Try asking, and sometimes you'll see that exactly the answer. So, and the discussion of meat is a topic that's big, that's expansive, that's gigantic, that's very, very complicated, the meat industry. But Lamaisi, you also want to know that the meat has, basically a handful of very reliable hashgachas, so that's maybe less of an issue because you need really good hashgachas to oversee meat because of the chomer shaboy. But the other things that we spoke about, the bottom line, the sikkim of this whole talk is a halach l'maisa. What do I want you to take home? I want you to take home is that be a responsible shopper. On products that have the hashgacha on it, hari lefanecha. Right in front of you, you can make the choice. But when you go to a supermarket, which kishmoikenu, it's super, because they could have 4, 5, 6 different separate vendors. You just want to make sure that before you go, that there's pikuach, because the people that are serving you behind the counter are certainly not the people that you're inviting to give a shir kloli. Certainly not. And many of them are not even, you might not even see a frum person in any of the vending areas. You might and you might not. You want to know that there might be a lot of frum people mulling around, but who are those people mulling around? What's their focus on? What are they hired for? So, that this is something which is biyadenu to do better. Chazal tell us, Adam Kaddish Atzmai, Ma'at, L'mat M'kadishin Oisi Harbil Mamala. A person makes an effort to not to be nichshol. A person makes an effort to do things which are responsible, and the Rebbe will give us siyata d'shmaya, and the Rebbe will give us siyata d'shmaya not to be nichshol, not to do something which he would want to do, or buy something which he doesn't want to buy. And that's what I would like to share with you, and just in closing, that we began talking about Rav Pam. I had an opportunity. Somebody asked me that Rav Pam was a kohen. Was there any special feature that he exhibited because he was a kohen? So I said yes. There was a very specific type of a midah that he exhibited because he was a kohen. Rav Pam used to magla hoya bepume. He was to very frequently say, "Ich bin a kohen hamavarech be'ahava." He didn't say ba'ava, be'ahava. And as he said the words ba'ahava, you just felt like that ahava was literally like enveloping you. And of course, his nusach, which was precise and exact, or Pam, anybody that was Zoicha to be in his Dal and Amos knew that he never, ever spoke without thinking, ever. Rav Pam always knew exactly the words that were coming out of Peh Kodshoy because he formulated them before he spoke. He chose words. He chose phrases. And Memela, that's what I told the person. I told the person, Rav Pam used his investment of kahuna because Ashek Tzar Mitzvah Yitzvanu L'varech es Am Yisrael b'ahava. Ich ben akoyin ha'mevarech b'ahava. That's what he used to say. He didn't only give brachas to Klal Yisrael. He wasn't only mishtoikik l'toivas kol yachid v'yachid. He was mishtoikik l'chol toivas yachid v'yachid and mevarech them, not only miyunkav d'liba, miyunkav d'liba b'ahava. And that's what he always said. So the tachlis, I believe, of any shir, of any person zeicha to speak to Am Kodesh, is to convey that also, that whatever we're saying, we want to serve the Eibishter ba'ava, want to serve the Eibishter in maximum capacity. And to do that, whatever zahiris we invest will always yield pimeya of what we're looking to accomplish, because the Rebbeinu Shloim cherishes people making an investment of thought and time when it comes to making sure that their ruchnius is safeguarded as much as possible. Thank you for listening.
Shem Irgen Shir Termas is Boston. I'd like to give a big yashikayach. Rabbi Eisen for tonight's shir. I'd like to give a big yashikayach to Rabbi Oberlander for sponsoring tonight's shir. Lili Nishmas Isha Malka Basar Roman Shalak Kohen. Shalom. Big yashikayach to the Lowinger family for sponsoring tonight's shir. Lili Nishmas Rabbi Yosef Eisen. Peretz Olav Shalom and Lili Nishmas Isha Mindel Basar Boshal Shalom. Tonight's shir is also learned Lili Nishmas Chaya Fega Rivka Basar Buda Ari Leibel Shalom. Wife of Rabbi Chaim Gross. Olav Shalom, board member of Irgun Shir Torah for many, many years, one of Yeshua's biggest benefactors. Just I was today Chof of Ten Ishmos Shur B'Tzar Chaim. Rabbi Yisai help Irgun Shir Torah be Marbitz Torah throughout the world, throughout the year, by putting an ad in the dinner journal in light of the upcoming annual dinner of Irgun Shir Torah on August 18th to honor one of the Rabbanim whose shiurim you've enjoyed, by calling Irgun Shir Torah at 718-851-8651 and email ist@yeshivanet.com. Ashakar to everyone for coming. Chananya ben Akashem and Rosh HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lezakis is Yisrael Afir Hebelam Tayam Mitzvah Shenema Adanei Chofes Amad Tzidka Yagdol Torah V'Yadeh.
Amen.